good evening and welcome to OffPlanet Radio Live. I'm Randy Maugans with Chris Hawley. She'll be here in just a minute, as will our guest tonight. And it is No, it's not. It's November the 15th. I'm losing time. I'm having slippage. I'm having bleed-throughs. It is November 15th, 2013, around the world. And just a reminder that next week will be our 50th anniversary JFK show. It is called Headshot, The Death of America, the JFK assassination 50 years after. We are featuring as guests that night Robert Morningstar from UFO Digest, one of the most credible investigators. He's been investigating the Kennedy assassination for 50 years, and he is a key expert in deconstructing the Zapruder film and creating the timeline of the actual assassination and the players and right down to the ballistics. Nick Redfern will also be here. He's going to talk about classified documents, Marilyn Monroe, and connections of JFK to UFOs and Majestic 12. You don't want to miss that. That's going to be 3 hours live next week. We will also have live guests with us in studio, along with Chris Hawley and myself, to kind of go through this. This is important stuff. We can't let this die, and we cannot stop the insistence that these documents be released, that finally we have closure on closure and closure on the Kennedy assassination. America has a gaping psychological wound. That was the first round of mind control trauma using media, by the way. The first shot, so to speak, that later reverberated across numerous events, including the Vietnam War, and of course culminating in the ultimate mass public trauma of September 11th, 2001. And it ties into what we're going to talk about tonight as well. Interesting to look at the spectrum of American life. The average American over the age of 2 spends more than 34 hours a week watching live television, says the Nielsen report from 2012, plus another 3 to 6 hours watching taped programs. The rate of antidepressant use in this country among teens and adults, people 12 and older, has increased by almost 400% between 1988 to 1994 and 2005 to 2008. Incidentally, children 2 to 11 watch an average of 24 hours a week of TV, or 3.5 hours a day. And these are sobering statistics about the mental health, the sanity of the people in this country, and I imagine the numbers are not much different in the Western world, the Western nations around the world. And I want to bring up my guest host, my co-host, my friend, my rant partner sometimes, Chris Hawley. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm glad to be here, and I cannot wait for us to get into this show. I really am looking forward to hearing everything that our guests have to say tonight. In fact, it's going to be hard for me to stop being the article writing interviewer and just listening and take part in this conversation. That's how much I want to hear everything they have to say. So I'm anxious.
Yeah, our guests tonight are Bonnie Jean Mitchell and John Mitchell, and they have a very interesting background. They run awakenvideo.org, where they have basically launched a frontal assault on media mind manipulation. And the work that they've done in their numerous videos, specifically Global Epidemic Exposed, Television Sigil Magick, and that's what we're going to talk about on the first segment of the show tonight. We want to welcome to OffPlanet Radio Live Bonnie and John Mitchell. Good evening.
Thank you, Randy.
Hi, Randy. Hi, Chris.
It's really great to be here. We appreciate it. Go ahead.
Yeah, where are you folks? Where are you located at? Where are you? I mean, you don't have to give us GPS coordinates, but geographically.
Right, we're in north central Indiana. We're just about exactly halfway between Chicago, Illinois, and Indianapolis, Indiana. So we're real centrally located there.
Excellent. And I imagine winter is setting in out there as well. It's actually been cold here in the east coast of the United States most of the week.
Yeah, it is getting really cold. We've gotten our first snow already, and it's starting to freeze out there. And winter's here to stay.
The subject that we're going to talk about this hour is something that we need to address. And as you heard from the statistics I read at the beginning of the show, America, the world is in trouble. We're swimming in media, mental mind washing. We are being controlled, and I don't think most people are aware, at least not on a conscious level, of how much manipulation goes on in the images that they see, and how much we are being controlled by an agenda that, as you point out, has a lot to do with black magic and ritual. And so let's talk about that a little bit. How did you get into this subject matter? You both have very interesting backgrounds, and we'll delve into that as we go along in the narrative. But what took you on the path of exposing specifically TV sigil magic? This is a subject that you don't see a lot of, and explain sigils.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, we've both of us have a pretty unusual background in our whole lives, which we can get into more in the second part when we start talking about the MiLABS and basically anything you want to talk about. But more specifically, the what we're calling mnemonic circles. We recognized them a few years ago. Now, we've been not watching TV and learning how to protect ourselves against the various poisons out there for quite a number of years now, so we had already not been watching TV for quite a while. We found ourselves at a relative's house who does watch TV, and we just noticed the circles. It's that simple. We looked at each other. We knew there was something really weird about them right away. And from that point forward, we kept noticing them. You know, you can't go into a restaurant these days without a television there. So we kept seeing them here and there, and we began our research. And it has covered everything from trauma-based mind control that we've had to research, and then all the way into a whole bunch of U.S. Government patents that have been issued in relation to mind control. And so the information really is out there, but this form of mind control that we're exposing now is nothing short of a global epidemic, hence the name of the video there, Global Epidemic Exposed Television Sigil Magick. And we are finding the most potent of the mind control techniques being utilized against mankind globally, and this is the very reason why people who are pushing away from these types of technologies and making themselves whole again through eating properly and avoiding the poisons, this small circle of people are beginning to notice that there's basically a whole other type of human being that's in the matrix. The people who are in the mass media, who are partaking in the cell phones and the iPads and the various other technologies, wireless and the smartphones. And these people, the small circle of awake people, are really able to notice that this other group of people, who are the majority, unfortunately, the masses, are definitely in a hypnotic trance. And as you pointed out, the level of TV watching is heinous. Our numbers say about 4.5 hours a day is the average across the board for people, and that in conjunction with the television mnemonics that we're going to talk about is enough time. That 4.5 hours every day is enough time, sufficient amount of mind control to keep every individual who's participating in a trance state 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and that is a mouthful.
John, before we go any further, explain to our audience what a sigil is and the circles, what you mean by spotting the circles. Give them, right.
You bet. Well, the television sigils, we have to go into sigil magic and explain that briefly to be able to get there. And perhaps also, I'll definitely answer this question, and then afterwards Bonnie can explain a little bit too about the history of TV to bring all of your audience into the same page here, so we all know that this has always been, all the way back in the 30s, this has always been nefarious technology. But just briefly, what a sigil is any shape or form that the magician makes. Now, this could be like a sculpture of a form or a drawing of a shape, and the magician would then give that form or that shape meaning to himself, and then invoke energy into that shape. And you can do that with just one magician and his sigil, and there are different various techniques to induce power into that sigil. But let's take, for instance, if that magician were to take that sigil and put it out into the masses, out into society, and let all of the human beings see that sigil, know the meaning of that sigil, and then everybody begins to give that sigil power. And a good example of this, a tangible example, would be for me to say on this audio interview, for everybody that's listening, to take their right index finger and put it in the air in front of them and make a swish symbol in the air. Just from left to right, make a swish symbol in the air with your right hand. And now that I've said that, about 80 or 90% of your audience who participated in that will come up with the word Nike in their consciousness, and that's because that sigil, that swoosh symbol of Nike, has that much power to where everybody recognizes it, even on audio interview like this, without seeing it. And they also associate, actually, in the society, they associate the word swoosh with the Nike symbol also. So it's very deeply embedded sigil magic, where these shapes mean something. And so the way that I like to describe it to where people understand that it definitely has power is to make people understand that sigil magic is also language. So this is a very good way for me to impart the amount of power that sigils have by telling everybody that the alphabet in English language sigil magic, the alphabet has 26 sigils or letters. As children, we're all put into the institution we call school, and we are taught to spell.
Yes.
With magical. Okay, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So the language is there. We're taught to spell with these 26 sigils, and each of these letters or sigils has a specific shape and a frequency that we pronunciate it with, okay? And so the audience might say, okay, well, I get that, I understand that, this could be sigils, and yes, they have a frequency, but does this sigil magic have power? Where is the evidence of that? So I always point out the work of someone who's getting very well known now globally, who is Dr. Masaru Emoto from Japan, and his work with sigil magic and how it affects water. And what Dr. Emoto's experiments involve, and anybody can do this themselves who has a inexpensive microscope at home, you take one beaker of purified water and you write the sigil love across it. And I know people have been trained to call that a word. It can be a word or a logos, but it's sigil magic. So you write the sigil love across one beaker, and then you take another beaker of pure water and you write the sigil hate across it, and separate those beakers and let them sit for a time. Come back to those beakers and repeatedly, in other words, you can do this experiment over and over again, and it will yield the same results. The beaker with the sigil love on it, when you freeze that water and look at it under a microscope, it has beautiful, symmetrical, crystalline form similar to snowflakes. It's very beautiful. And the water with the sigil hate across it, under a microscope, looks basically like swamp water or mud. It's very gross and not anything you'd want to drink. So this is tangible, scientific proof that sigils, these words, these letters that we use every day, have power. And one more person, just to get plenty of references out there, one more person I point to is Dr. Ibrahim Karim from Egypt, who is a scientist who has come forward and he uses sigil magic in the way of making forms in the shape of these sigils and placing them in various places like taxi cabs, offices, homes. He's actually done an entire town, and he actually measurably, scientifically, they've measured the change in energy from doing this. So his website, incidentally, is biogeometry.com. That's Abraham Karim. And so these are a couple good examples. And just one more point that I like to point out is recently there were 6 individuals who are studying ancient ruins around the world, and specifically in Egypt, and then one individual in South America with the Peruvian ruins. And just to give them credit, their names are Dr. Stephen Mailer, Chris Dunn, Gary Evans, Brian Forrester, who is the Peruvian expert, Youssef Oyen, and Patricia. And these people, these 6 individuals, came forward with a piece of crucial information, which is the reason why we bring it up in this interview. And that is, they have discovered that the most ancient ruins that they have ever visited are also the most well-built buildings. Okay, these monolithic buildings are built better than anything that came after them, which says the further back we go in history on this planet, the better things were built. But the interesting thing is, here's the catch. The most ancient monolithic ruins are not only built the best, but they have no hieroglyphs, which is to suggest that at a time when the beings on this planet were able to build things better than anything that came after that, they had no language. And this plays a big role in evidence, in the chain of evidence, as far as language or this dark sigil magic playing a heavy hand in the descent of the consciousness of mankind. And so I hope that that's a pretty good explanation for beginners there for you guys. And, of course, again, to really understand what the mnemonic circles look like, I can tell you basically what they look like. They're semicircles in a circular pattern that rotate in an opposing way. And they'll have binary code we're finding in here that's similar to the QR code, which actually, since we have this time here, the interesting thing for the esoteric people out there who get these little spiritual meanings to things, the algorithm that's used to read QR code is literally called Read Solomon, which is very interesting. Inside the mnemonics, we're also finding a count down and a count up, which brings people in and out of a hypnotic state very rapidly, which is a well-known method for inducing heavy trance. And again, we're finding these sigils and symbols inside of them, and Bonnie will be speaking later about how that relates to Solomon's key and a very ancient form of the sigil magic. But that's about what I have here to kind of explain the sigils. If you'd like, Bonnie would like to speak about the history of the TV a bit so that all of your audience can really understand how nefarious this thing is. And it's not entertainment, it's entrainment.
Well, one of the things that strikes me about it as I was sitting here listening to you is I grew up in the 60s, and there was a lot of Walt Disney. And we all know now, because a lot of people have really done the forensics on this, that Disney was heavy into embeds, and especially sigil embeds, but also subliminal imagery as well. And if you think back on the magical context of many Disney movies, especially the animated movies, like I'm trying to think of it, and where Mickey Mouse was the Sorcerer's Apprentice. Those movies were really part, I think, in training us early to be focused on what they were going to feed us in terms of these embeds.
Absolutely. Disney's one of the worst examples of mind control out there. The Nazis used Disney's stuff after they discovered that they ran a Donald Duck commercial, and that was the best year they had ever had for people getting used to and paying their income tax, because Donald Duck told them to do. Yeah, you're probably familiar with that. So, in that documentary of ours, the Global Epidemic Exposed Television Sigil Magick, there's a little part in there where we show specifically the mnemonics that Disney has created for the children too. And let's not forget now, it's divine law that they have to literally tell you what they're doing. And since the beginning, Disney has been telling all the parents, we will capture your child's imagination.
Yeah. So basically, they become the overseer of what develops in children's minds.
Precisely.
Yeah, let's go ahead, and Bonnie, you wanna come in and present on the television aspect of it. I think that's the next logical place to go here.
Yes. Well, the first television that was introduced to the public in the 1920s was the mechanical television, and it was a very large wooden box with a tiny little 3-inch screen, viewing screen, and so a person would have to get pretty close to stare into the screen, and they would see an orange glowing flicker, and this would pulse 18 times in 1 second. Now, imagine having 18 pictures in front of you, and you have to look at every picture and understand every picture, see the details, but you only have 1 second. So the conscious mind really can't do that. The conscious mind kind of steps aside, and the subconscious takes over, and it just takes all of the information in and stores it for later. It's just a big data center. And the subconscious mind doesn't say, well, this is logical, this makes sense, or this doesn't make sense, I'm not going to pay attention to it. It just takes everything in. So the very first television that came out in the 1920s was already putting people in a hypnotic trance, putting the conscious mind aside and programming the subconscious. Now, the TV went on to be highly developed in Nazi Germany, and in 1936, in Berlin, Germany, they showed television broadcasts to 150,000 Germans. They watched the Olympic Games on widescreen TV, 40 inches wide, and that's pretty amazing for 1936. And the cathode ray tube, which came out for the televisions, was developed by William Crookes. And William Crookes was very much into the paranormal and spiritualism. And he was president of the Society for Psychical Research over in Great Britain, and they studied paranormal topics. He was also a member of the Golden Dawn, which was a magical group. And William Crookes intended to be able to speak to the spirit world through this device, the cathode ray tube. He believed that the electrons that were created by the cathode ray could be manipulated by spirits. And his intention was to have these electrons manipulated by spirits, so when they reached the phosphorescent television screen, they would show a message from the spirit world. So right away with the beginning of the television, we've also got the idea that this technology can be used to communicate with spirits. And also in 1928, Thomas Edison was working on a spirit phone, which he was developing to speak to the spirit world. So it wasn't unheard of at that time for scientists to be working on this type of thing. And shortly after the TV came out, ITC developed, and that is instrumental trance communication with the spirit world. People were experimenting with their television sets and their radios to communicate with their loved ones who had passed over. And in fact, this has continued to develop, and today, over in Europe, they actually have ITC laboratories, and these people claim to be speaking to the astral plane on a daily basis with their television sets. Now, what the television does when you sit down in front of it, it actually changes your brain waves. It doesn't take very long, less than a minute, for your brain waves to change from beta to alpha. Now, a beta wave is normal waking consciousness. That's when you're alert. And an alpha wave is a meditative state. Although when you're watching TV, you're not really meditating. It's more like a forced trance state. So they are causing hypnosis through the flicker rate. Well, like I said, the mechanical TV had a flicker rate of 18 hertz, or 18 frames per second. But nowadays it's more like 50 hertz, or 60 hertz. That's obviously way too much for the conscious mind to handle. It's overwhelming on purpose. So they're causing hypnosis with the flicker rate. And also, nowadays, they have a very fast, rapid succession of scene changes to overwhelm the conscious mind. You know, back in the 60s, 70s, even the 80s, the scenes were kind of slow. You know, you could follow the story, and one scene went pretty slowly to the next scene. But now it's very fast, and it's very difficult for the conscious mind to keep up with this, and that is done on purpose. They don't want the conscious mind to keep up with this because they're programming the subconscious. Also, the imagery that's used can embed multiple layers of complex encoded messages by way of simple symbols or sigils. And this is what the subconscious mind recognizes, basic symbols and sigils. Also, they're using sound waves or harmonics for neurolinguistic programming and to embed detailed commands that can be linked to audible triggers. In other words, a human can be programmed to react a certain way when they hear a code word that triggers their subconscious mind. You know, they'll have something embedded in their subconscious mind that's linked to a trigger. So when they hear that trigger word, they will react to feel and act a certain way. Now, in 1977, the U.S. Senate had a hearing to discover what the CIA was working on, and they had a secret project called MK Ultra. And this was all about mind control, the control of human behavior. They had 144 projects they were working on, all related to the control of human behavior, and 7 of those were specifically to do with hypnosis. Now today, anybody can go on the internet and they can search for mind control patents. And these are granted by the U.S. Patent Office. And I wanted to read one to you in particular that I think is very important. It is called Nervous System Manipulation by Electromagnetic Fields for Monitors. It is U.S. patent number 6506148, and this was granted in 2003. Physiological effects have been observed in a human subject in response to stimulation of the skin with weak electromagnetic fields that are pulsed with certain frequencies, near 1/2 Hertz or 2.4 Hertz, such as to excite a sensory resonance. Many computer monitors and TV sets, when displaying pulsed images, emit pulsed electromagnetic fields of sufficient amplitudes to cause such excitation. It is therefore possible to manipulate the nervous system of a subject by pulsing images displayed on a nearby computer monitor or TV set. For the latter, the image pulsing may be embedded in the program material, or it may be overlaid by modulating a video stream. So these programmers are using frequency as a weapon. Now there's a very interesting side fact about this patent in particular. It was granted to a man named Hendrikus Lou, who happened to have a nickname. His nickname is Who. So he's also known as Who Lou. Now in 2008, Hulu.com became available on the internet, and this was funded by the military and U.S. intelligence agencies. And they claim it is simply because they wanted all of their soldiers across the world to be able to go online and watch their favorite television programs. Now, anybody can go to Hulu.com, and for free they can watch streaming videos of their favorite television programs. And you can watch this from any U.S. military base around the world. So these harmful frequencies can actually be pulsed from computer monitors and TV sets. And are they using this at Hulu.com? I'm sure they are, with their new digital signal.
Interesting, huh?
Yeah.
Extremely. It's amazing. If you were watching the TV and turned away and didn't look at it, do you believe they are still able to convey the information through just audio methods?
Yes.
Into our brain as well?
Absolutely.
Yes,
Yeah.
the harmonic frequencies are very powerful as well.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you've already been sitting there. It only takes really about 15 or 30 seconds before your brain goes into an alpha state. That's a trance state.
Yeah, I don't know if you have the information in front of you about the DNA, but we've run across patents also. Do you want to talk about that?
Do.
Where okay, Bonnie's got some info here that'll really blow you away about. There's a patent here where they can actually influence your DNA. You got that?
Yes. Yeah, well, everything is frequency. You know, everything has a vibrational frequency, including our bodies. And our DNA, well, you know, that so-called junk DNA, that's just, you know, doing absolutely nothing.
Right.
Well, scientists know now that's not junk at all. It's actually a biological internet. And our DNA can communicate. We can communicate with each other, and it doesn't matter how far apart we are. Our DNA actually acts as an antenna. It receives information, and it transmits information. Well, scientists have discovered that they can use frequencies to affect DNA, and I have another patent here, and this is actually for determining therapeutic beneficial frequencies to heal DNA. This is U.S. patent number 7280874, granted in 2007. Methods are provided for readily and efficiently determining resonant frequencies that can be used therapeutically or beneficially for debilitation of specific types of genomic materials, including DNA, RNA, genes, and gene sections. The methods can be used in a variety of circumstances related to various human and animal diseases and conditions. Therapeutic or beneficial resonance frequencies thus determined are adapted for use with currently available frequency-emitting devices by shifting resonant frequencies to electromagnetic ranges capable of generation by such devices. So they're actually using these frequencies to heal DNA. They know that they can do that. Mm-hmm. So instead, on the television, they're using it to hurt people, to program people, to affect their DNA in negative ways by pulsing these electromagnetic frequencies out of the screen.
Right. So basically, just by studying the patents and, you know, well, not just that, but a few other things too, we know now, we have enough data to say that especially if they have a sample of the individual, the target, let's say, the target DNA, they can design a frequency on their end to pulse out, and it doesn't matter if you're watching the screen or not, it pulses out of the screen, and it can influence your actual DNA. So, and this isn't just, the television, just to be clear, this is your laptop, your home computer, your iPad, your Kindle, your what people call smartphones, that we don't think they're too smart, but anything essentially that has a screen on it, they're using this type of technology. And like what Bonnie said, just connecting the dots with the Hulu patent too is just remarkable. That it's right there. Anybody can look this stuff up, and it's just amazing what they're doing.
I had a friend once that used to constantly tell me that as life moved forward, because we're a little older than I am, at least, than most of our listeners, that it seemed that the population was being sprayed with dum-dum juice. And it used to always make me laugh, and I actually took that, saying, and put it in some of my articles. However, what you're telling me seems to be exactly what they're doing and have been doing. And the more technology they introduce, the more in control they can keep all of society. Isn't that exactly what you're telling us?
Yeah, they're pulling out where we are right now as a species on this planet. Is the controllers have pulled out all the stops. It's gotten so ridiculous. I mean, they don't. You guys are up to speed, I'm sure, with all the false flags going on from Boston bombing and the Sandy Hook.
I've been writing about this stuff for about 7 years. Yeah.
I mean, this is a good sign in a way, because they're getting so sloppy, because they're just trying to do everything that they possibly can to keep the consciousness of human beings down, because if they can't do that, they lose. And it's that simple. So they're already losing ground, and we believe that there is a great splitting off occurring, basically two separate worlds splitting off from each other.
Yeah.
And it's happening right before our eyes. So that's why we really look at like these interviews we've been doing on the TV mnemonics. We keep telling people, that's really, we're not trying to entertain anybody. This is really, our goal is just to alert all of our brothers and sisters out there that the television and mass media is actually a weapon. It's not it for entertainment. It's very, very dangerous. And, we love all these humans out here, and we're just trying to get as many people to pull themselves out of the matrix as possible before this shift happens.
What do you find now that we're well into the era of digital? And we have digital televisions, all the digital devices, our computers, which have always been digital devices, have the ability to put out immensely packed data in very concise ways. Anything, sound, visuals, very, very fast refresh rates on the new monitors. Are we beginning to see the effects of digital, because we're swimming in signal. We have radio, satellite. We have all of the radio frequency signals attendant to like telemetry in aircraft. If you're on an aircraft, and I fly just enough to observe what happens, you're basically bathing in all of these waves, electromagnetic, radio frequency waves, microwave, satellite. Are we seeing the effects now of the digital era in the behavior of the populace?
I think that what you're talking about in this takeover of the digital world is just that. It's a satanic overlay of our own true reality. And by having the people tranced out and unconscious, essentially, and stuck in this false matrix, this is actually a large part of what I'm sure you've heard of, term Project Bluebeam. And their intention is to have everything chipped and everything on a computer overlay where they can monitor everything. Every tree be GMO with a chip in it. Every plant that grows, every human, of course, everything. This is a completely archonic, satanic system, but these people that we're trying to warn that are unconscious and stuck in this satanic matrix are literally putting themselves in harm's way, their soul in harm's way, by taking part in a false reality that to them will soon be reality, and that's where we're headed.
You have two other trends that I've noticed, and obviously some of this has been around for a while, but the use of RFID chips, which are dominant in the retail industry now. Almost everything is using RFID for so-called inventory control tracking. And then, gosh, I forgot the second thing. See, I'm actually getting bombed by these waves myself sometimes, and you can sense it when your memory starts to drift out. I actually forgot. This is terrible. I actually forgot what the second thing was.
We can talk later, too, about some things to do to help you with that. To protect.
Can I get in here, too? Because while you're talking, I just have to ask this. This is such an easy way to control us. I mean, we're the sheep and they're the shepherds, obviously. Because if you really think about this, they have done something extremely devious here. Going from your political views to your views on religion, so forth and so on, you can put a dividing line sometimes out there, how you'll find groups of people that are brainwashed with one thought, and they mimic and use rhetoric. They don't give you thought patterns or think out things for themselves. They can't explain things to you. They just parrot,
That's right.
whether it be left or right or anything like that, which is a technique to divide and conquer. Well, they do this in all ways. So politically, religion, all kinds of things, everything you can think of, keeps society always at odds, in chaos, and divided. And as long as you walk around with a gadget stuck to your hand, your head, you're something in your ear, or you're staring at a screen, you are literally hooked up into the grid where your mind, your brain, is being fed whatever they tell you to think. And it's been working really well because everything is collapsing in my mind around us. And as I said before, this is the way they're going to take away your humanity. You're just going to be a controlled item if you allow it. And if that's not enough for people to turn off these things, put them down. Do not sit at dinner looking at your phone while your family's around you and not speak to them.
Oh, no. It's getting much worse than that now. You can't have conversations.
I'm just saying, it's collapsing, right.
You can't have conversations with people without the intermediary of an electronic device anymore.
And even worse than that, if you do what John and Bonnie are doing, or I've been writing about, and Randy and I have been trying to do, if you bring this out, you're also going to bring anger from the public. The people, the young people especially, will come back and lash out at me if I write about this or talk about this with such anger. That's been programmed into them.
Oh, that's the demonic element.
Absolutely.
I know what I just remembered what it was. And I didn't mean to cut you off there, Chris. Sorry, we got a little skip on the signal. It was right now in this state, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, they are now debating opening up taking of DNA from not only people who are convicted of crimes in the state, but people who are arrested. And they're going to the level, I noticed somebody in the chat room posted about the fact that they're taking DNA from babies, and I would assume that's true. I would assume that if you've had medical procedure, there's an entire possibility you're having your DNA taken. Now, from my standpoint, the ultimate overlay is this digital media onto our personal DNA and what they can do with that, because just listening to what you talked about with sigils in the early part of the show, the ultimate sigil is going to be an overlay onto the human DNA for the purposes of controlling the total organism. Do you agree with that? Do you see that as a trend?
I totally agree with that, and this is the perfect segue here for Bonnie to begin talking about Solomon's Key, because the sigils of Solomon's Key, these ancient sigils, are exactly what we're finding embedded in all this information, although the digital age is apparently new to everybody. That's only a total illusion, yes. And so Bonnie will talk about Rabbi Solomon, King Solomon, and the 72 names of God.
Yeah. Well, King Solomon was king of the Israelites from 970 to 930 BCE. And he was a magician, and he wrote a group of magical texts, or grimoires, and they are called the Key of Solomon. Now, according to Fritz Springmeier and Cisco Wheeler, who did a lot of research into the Illuminati satanic families, these dark magicians of the Illuminati, they actually use magical guides to help them in their dark rituals. And one of the guides they use is the Key of Solomon. And specifically, one of the books called The Lesser Key of Solomon, Goetia. It actually describes 72 spirits or demons, and King Solomon calls them names of God because he claims that God gave him these names. Which God he's talking about, not sure, but these 72 spirits are all from hell, and they are in a hierarchy very much like the U.S. military. There are kings of hell, princes, marquises, dukes, earls, soldiers, and each of them is represented by, a certain planet and certain colors. And so what these dark magicians do is they create magical pentacles. And in Solomon's time, he could actually create them out of metal like gold and silver and copper. But nowadays, some magicians, they just use the color. So, for example, if they were going to use a sigil of one of these 72 spirits or demons, they would be sure to use the correct planet, the correct colors. If they were going to use one of these, a king, let's say a king demon from hell, they would use the sun or the color gold. So when they make this magical pentacle, it would have gold rings, and it actually has concentric rings with information embedded within them, including the sigils of these demons. And they're very, very similar to the mnemonic circles on television, which are also concentric rings of different colors with information embedded within them. Now, in the Lesser Key of Solomon, Goetia, it says, "The spirits of the Goetia are portions of the human brain. Their seals, therefore, represent methods of stimulating or regulating those particular spots of the brain through the eye. The names of God, or the names of these spirits, are vibrations calculated to establish control of the human brain." So, in these mnemonic circles, they have all of this information. Like John said, they have binary code, they have a series of lines, series of dots, they have things that look like Hebrew letters, and within some of them, out of the center, you'll see a light source, like a ball of light, like a glowing ball of light. And if you look at these things frame by frame, if you slow it down and look at it frame by frame, you will see within the center of these mnemonic circles things that look like sigils. In this light source, they actually look like different sigils. So these 72 names of God, or these demons, they're not just used in the Key of Solomon, they're used by Kabbalists and Hermeticists and different magicians around the world. In fact, there's something called the Shem HaMephorash, which is derived from Bible code. It's 3 verses from the Bible. And out of this Shem HaMephorash comes 72 spirits, or 72 names of God. And you've also got the Church of Satan using this same thing, except they call it the Shem HaMephorash, and they're also using the 72 names of God, or these 72 spirits. In fact, the Sistine Chapel is laid out according to these 72 spirits. So why are they so popular? Why is all these magicians using these 72 spirits? It's because they believe that these 72 spirits control the human brain, and not only that, that they are responsible for all creation and manifestation. So that's pretty huge. They're definitely doing something with this, and when you sit down in front of the TV and you're having your subconscious mind programmed, they can actually not only embed you with any information they want, but they can embed you with this demonic energy.
That's right. Yeah, so, you know, what's happened essentially is over time, all the knowledge has been stolen and hidden away from the masses, what became the masses. Before, we were all on an equal footing, and we all knew that this place, this so-called reality, was magical. And now we live in a time where basically all the humans on this planet, I can't say all, there are still some magicians out here, Bonnie and I are not alone, but the masses, the majority of human beings, have been fooled into thinking that magic is a fiction, like Disney World, you know, or, you know, something like the movies. This is what magic is, or sleight of hand. That's what magic is. And so you have all these people who don't even believe in magic anymore. The root of their actual reality, they don't believe in that, and at the same time they're being fooled into and mind controlled into participating in dark magic. And we don't call it black magic, we call it dark magic, because the word black is actually been turned against human beings. It's a part of word magic being used against human beings, the whole black and white thing, black being bad and negative and everything, like black ball, blacklist, everything, black hole, all these negatives around the word black, and then they use it to describe human beings even as black people, which is a great insult. So we use the word dark magic, and that's what these Illuminati Satanists have done, is basically hijacked human beings who, when they're whole and healthy, are perfectly capable and built to actually create a beautiful reality with their pineal gland, a reality tunnel, which is incorporated around the world by all the human beings on the world to generate a Garden of Eden type of heaven on earth, if you will. This is the normal state, and it's been hijacked, like I said, and that's why human beings have been attacked on every level, from the food, it's definitely not just the mass media, but what we are revealing here with the television mnemonics is the key to the control factor of the consciousness of mankind, because nowadays everybody is involved with this mass media, unfortunately.
Can you define for us a little bit the keys of Solomon as you understand them and what they have? Part of the problem with these subjects is that they often dogleg back into the Hebrew scriptures, what's called the Bible, and most people have no understanding of it because the Bible itself never really spells out what Solomon was into. It's pretty clear that he was into some pretty wild stuff, and especially if you look at ancillary books to the Bible, you get a little bit more of it. But it actually goes into the modern era, and I'm thinking now of books that I read when I was a teenager. James Hurtak's The Keys of Solomon, and also the work of John Dee and Robert Kelly back in the 15th century with Enochian magic. So can you kind of pull all of that together into a way that we can nutshell it a little bit?
Well, basically, King Solomon, he wrote these books that describe the type of magic that he did. And some of the books, well, one of them's particular is specifically about the planets and the power of the planets. And when he did his magic, he, it's very detailed and very complex and very specific. It must be done on the correct day. It must be done in the correct hour, the correct phase of the moon. The planets must be in the right alignment. And each of these spirits is controlled by a certain planet. And there's also it also requires blood sacrifice, these rituals that they are performed. And
also, just the way the sigils are created, too, is also what I believe what this really is when you look out into the stars when you're standing on planet Earth and you look out into the stars, what you're really looking out into is what's already contained inside of you. Mm-hmm. And I hope I'm not going off on the really deep end here for people, but
go ahead and go there. We've talked about this before, yes.
Okay, this is the truth, that all of the multiverse is folded up inside of each human being. And so when you look out there and you see the stars, you are actually seeing as above, so below, in other words. You're seeing what's already inside of you. And what these magicians, not just King Solomon, but he's definitely the most famous or infamous, but this is a way to map out the outside reality that you see and contain it. And so by dividing these energies up and naming them and personalizing them and creating sigils around them, you in a way invoke the energy of that particular, whatever you want to call it, a planet energy, or on a more smaller, back down to as above, so below. So in the so below, it would be these demons, and it's a way to not only categorize them so that you can utilize them yourself, but it's a way to breathe in energy into the magic itself by having certain tools, in other words, that you can use. And that's what sigils basically are tools. And so what the magician knows about these 72 spirits or sigils is what all of humanity has been taught to forget, I guess is the best way to put it. And the fact is that they do control aspects of the subconscious mind. And so the bad guys know that, and all of the masses don't know that. And they've been seriously duped into not only accepting it, but we're to the point now, as you guys know, where people are addicted to it. This is why you can't walk down the street without seeing the majority of adults, and unfortunately a lot of children now too, holding one of those microwaves up to their head. They're addicted to the frequency, and they're addicted to what's happening to them. And this is also covered in the prophecies that in these last days that human beings would be addicted to their poison, and they would fight you if you try to take it away from them. And that's where we are.
And you brought up just the word book you keep saying over and over. Well, the people that were readers, those of us that would spend hours in Barnes and Nobles years ago and buy a ton of books and take them home and sit and read them rather than watch the TV, must have become a problem. We were not bending as well as they wished. So what did they do? They closed that down, and everything is now an e-book.
Yeah.
You read everything off of a screen.
Which
so
isn't good for you.
They still get you, right.
That's right. And also, once you begin to know more about the sigil magic and understand that language is a sigil magic also, then you have to understand that you have to be very, very careful about what you read. You have to be very selective about what you allow to go inside your mind. So it's not necessarily, I don't believe that it's necessarily a good thing to read everything you can get your hands on. It's much better to take everything with just an ounce of suspicion and take a look at it, and then spiritually understand if that's positive for you or not, and then go for it. Yeah.
We're going to take a break at this point, break the hour off, give everybody a chance to refresh. I would like to carry this conversation over a little bit into the second hour as well, because I think we got some loose ends to tie up. And then, of course, I'd like to go into a little bit of your background and talk a little bit about UFOs, abductions, and the MiLABS activity that's going on. So everybody can hang out. We're going to take about a 7 or 8 minute break. Announcement to the audience that there will be an after-hours show tonight. Duncan O'Finney and Miranda Kelly will be joining us. They have some things they want to talk about, and so that will occur as, I guess, the third hour of a 2-hour show. We'll do all that when we come back on the other side. This is OffPlanet Radio Live. We will return in about 7 or 8 minutes.
listen to OffPlanet Radio.